If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.
You could say that the March primaries in St. Louis marked a watershed moment in South St. Louis politics. Perhaps the best evidence to this statement is Dan Guenther's victory in the 9th Ward aldermanic race. The Democrat joins us next to talk about the winds of change blowing through St. Louis. So let's hit the music.
This is the Politically Speaking podcast, a candid conversation with the Show Me State's biggest political newsmakers.
I'm Jason Rosenbaum.
And I'm Joe Mannies.
That's Eric Greitens, Navy SEALs running for governor, and I'm really glad to be on with you, Jason and Joe.
I'm going to push back on these regulators.
I'm doing this for the people.
I was encouraged along the way, not just by my family, but by a lot of teachers and professors, and knew when I was in college that I would run for office someday.
We're very excited about the prospect of having some more free market solutions.
Even though after the conversation, I still might not agree.
We want our listeners to get a real sense of what drives these people.
They're actually people with a story to tell.
And welcome to the Politically Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Jason Rosenbaum, a reporter with St. Louis Public Radio. Joining me in studios in St. Louis is
Colleague Joe Mannies.
And introducing for the first time to our public radio audience, the likely new alderman for the 9th Ward of St. Louis.
Yes, Dan Guenther. I guess technically I am the Democratic nominee at the moment.
Yes, hence the reason I said likely. You do have a Green Party candidate, but as we were talking about before, the Green Party has not performed particularly well. So it's very likely that you're going to be joining the board in a month or so.
Yeah, the general election is April 4th, and then from what I've heard, the end of April will be the swearing in, and May will kick things off.
So we just want to thank you for coming in today. You were the only person to unseat an incumbent in the March 7th election. Was it March 7th?
Yep.
Yeah,
March
I know.
7th.
It just seems.
It seems like it was like 10 years ago at this point. But and we're going to have more of the newbies from the Board of Aldermen on in the next weeks and months. But we wanted to bring the person who actually unseated an incumbent on first. I guess that when you unseat an incumbent, you get first crack at Politically Speaking. So
I appreciate that. That's we have a whole new class of aldermen coming in. But I'm proud to be the representative of the 9th Ward and took on an 18-year incumbent, and so we had a very successful run.
Yeah, I mean, this is the largest new freshman class in the Board of Aldermen over 20 years.
So before we ask you about your life story and any issues, for our listeners, what are the boundaries of the 9th Ward and what neighborhoods does it include?
So the 9th Ward, it almost looks like a 9, almost. So on the north side of the 9th Ward, I have all of Benton Park West neighborhood. So the boundaries of that are Gravois, Cherokee Street, and Jefferson. And then if you head east, then I have all of the Benton Park neighborhood, which is where I live in Benton Park. Benton Park is it's Jefferson, Gravois, 55, and Cherokee. I have a little bit of McKinley Heights neighborhood, a part of the Soulard neighborhood from Sidney Street south, and then the ward itself actually wraps all the way down the riverfront between 55 and the riverfront down to a neighborhood called Mount Pleasant, which that's kind of our southern boundaries. So we actually we mentioned earlier, you talked about Kara Spencer in the 20th Ward. The 9th Ward actually wraps around 3 edges of the 20th Ward.
And the other interesting thing is, and this has been the way in the past, isn't Cherokee Street, like the actual street, is the boundary line? So one side is the 9th Ward and the other is the 20th Ward? Or is that changed since redistricting?
That's roughly correct. So from Jefferson Avenue on the west side of Cherokee Street, 9th Ward is on the north side of Cherokee and 20th Ward is on the south side. But if you go to the east side of Jefferson Avenue, the 9th Ward is on both sides. So we have the Benton Park neighborhood on the north, and then we have the Marine Villa neighborhood on the south.
Yes.
Actually, I used to live. I mean, this is way long ago, and actually at this point it was in the 10th Ward.
Yep.
Before the 20th got moved down there, which is another drama in itself.
Yeah.
But, because I lived on Kosciuszko Street there overlooking the highway.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned the neighborhoods because one of my pet peeves is Cherokee Street being described as a neighborhood. It's actually a commercial thoroughfare that cuts through 4 separate neighborhoods.
Correct.
And I know that sounds like a linguistic nitpicking thing, but I don't want to understate that fact because there are people that live in these neighborhoods that may not be close to Cherokee Street, but it's still an important element of those neighborhoods. So.
Yeah, and we a lot of people down there, we do refer to it as the Cherokee neighborhoods because there are like you said 4 different neighborhoods that surround Cherokee Street and are part of it. So we try to come together for some of the activities and events that we do on Cherokee Street as 4 neighborhoods working together.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, your involvement in the community, and why you decided to jump into electoral politics.
Well, a little bit about myself. So I moved to the Benton Park neighborhood roughly 15 years ago. I moved down there really came in as a rehabber, restoring historic homes. Did that for a number of years until right around the Great Recession happened, and a lot of people started getting out of buying properties and restoring them. So at that time, I kind of, like a lot of other people in the building industries, I kind of took another look at what I wanted to do. I had when I first moved to the neighborhood, I got really involved with the Benton Park Neighborhood Association. Benton Park is the second oldest park in the city of St. Louis. It was a Victorian strolling park when it was created 150 years ago. I really fell in love with the park, and I wanted to do what I could as a citizen to help really kind of restore the park. I have a really kind of a deep respect for public spaces. I think that public spaces are areas where we can really break down some not only racial separations but socioeconomic separations, age separations. So I see parks as a place where we can really all get together and find common values and learn how to talk to each other and work together. So when I moved in the neighborhood, I got really involved. I started a fundraising committee for our neighborhood association. I'm the parks chairman for our neighborhood association for I think almost 30 years. A great friend of mine, Charles Hooker, who's a horticulturalist, he was the parks chairman, and he kind of took me under his wing, and I ended up working with him quite a bit in horticulture. So I learned a lot about plants, learned a lot about kind of restoring some of the historic aspects of the park. And then I would say a number of years ago, probably 3 to 4 years ago, from the kind of the community organizer aspect, a number of people around Cherokee and the neighborhoods around Cherokee decided that we needed to maybe take a look at our local politics as a way to get some new ideas and some of the issues that we were concerned about, get them into City Hall. So almost 2.5 years ago, I guess, I started working on Kara Spencer's campaign. Mm-hmm. So I was a part of her campaign. We were really excited for her win. And then I guess that was kind of what led to the following, couple of years of really pushing new ideas in politics. So besides working on Kara, then I was a part of the campaign for our 9th Ward Democratic Committee Man and Committee Woman, which Sarah Johnson, our new 9th Ward Committee Woman, she actually beat Pat Ortman, who was a 22-year incumbent. And so that was a big jump. Then I got involved a year ago, January, I started working on the Bruce Franks campaign for state rep. And then I guess just kind of seeing all of those campaigns come together, I just thought, this is a good time for me to put my hat in the ring. And I knew it was going to be a tough challenge, and it was. But I think the area is definitely just ready for some new leadership in the city of St. Louis. What
do you see as your top issue during the campaign and going forward?
Well, it's hard to put a finger on one top issue because I think there are so many things that we need to work on. Kind of adding to a little bit more about my background, from when I was working with the parks and kind of restoring the parks, that led to a position in the mayor's office, and I worked in the Office of Sustainability. for the mayor's office, and then that led to when Mayor Slay decided not to run again, the program that I was working on, we moved to Brightside St. Louis, or which sometimes is called Operation Brightside or Brightside St. Louis.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of the agency that does a lot of beautification work. It cleans up litters, things like that.
Yeah, and this goes back to the Shamel administration.
Yep, it was it was started by the Shamel administration.
His sister Lou Green used to be involved in that.
Yep, and then Lou Green's daughter, Mary Lou Green, is now running it. So, and they're over 30 years old, the organization itself. So it is the kind of the cleaning and greening group of the city of St. Louis. And that is really where, from working in the sustainability office and working with Brightside, that I can kind of say that that's one of my main issues. It's one of my top priorities. Now, a lot of people, I've knocked on a lot of doors during this campaign, and it seems like, the number one issue is definitely crime and safety in neighborhoods. However, what we were talking about and what we were kind of professing when we were working in the sustainability office is how safety, it really does tie to cleaner neighborhoods and community gardens where neighbors get together and they talk about issues and open dialogue. So I see the kind of some greening initiatives for the city of St. Louis, kind of taking pride in our neighborhoods as being my top priority, but it leads to many other things. It leads to economic development. It leads to safety. It leads to better education for students. So I see environmental issues as something that I can really speak about and try to push when it comes to city politics.
Now, one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that the 9th and the 20th Ward aldermen, since they are so close together and in some cases like right next to each other, their working relationship is really, really key for that entire area. There was seemingly some differences of opinion between Craig Schmidt, who lost to Kara Spencer, and Ken Ortman. Mm-hmm. It seemed like there was differences of opinion between Kara Spencer and Ken Ortman on a lot of things. How do you see your working relationship with Alderman Spencer going into the future? Because it does seem like you two are pretty allied. She endorsed your campaign. Mm-hmm. What do you think that's going to mean for that entire part of Southeast St. Louis?
Well, I think it's a huge win for the entire area because we do have two alder people that are aldermen that are working together daily. I've been working, well before Kara ran for office. I was working with her. She worked on Cherokee Street and for Nebula, and was part of kind of the small business revitalization of that neighborhood. So I think that it's a great opportunity for us to really have two alder people that are working on causes that are going to affect the entire area. There's working on Bruce's campaign. He had a saying that Gravois Park isn't good, or Benton Park isn't good if Gravois Park isn't
right.
good, or Lafayette Square isn't good if Town Square isn't good. So I think that that leads us to where the areas that I'm representing, we do have a lot of challenges, especially in the southern areas and in the Benton Park West and the Mount Pleasant areas with vacancies, with crime, with abandoned buildings. So I think that those issues are the very same issues that Kara's going to be working on when it comes to Gravois Park and some of the areas in Dutchtown, the areas that she represents. So I think it's a great win for the entire region there. Because we have two people that work together well. We don't always agree on everything, but we actually respect each other and we'll work together for the good of the people down there.
And that was going to be my next question, because I did a decent amount of reporting on the development of the Cherokee Street business thoroughfare, especially compared to the neighborhoods. And one of the things that I learned through my reporting is the recession really, really hurt those neighborhoods, probably more than many St. Louis neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And vacancy, as you mentioned, is a big problem. Getting people to either turn those abandoned buildings into apartments or homes, or single-family homes or double-family homes is a huge challenge. Is that going to be one of your big challenges going on, is kind of trying to reduce the vacancy in those parts of your ward and just making the entire ward more economically vibrant and not just parts of it, essentially?
Yeah, that's absolutely one of our biggest challenges. And, from being in the building industry or the building trades pre-recession, we kind of saw what happened, where a lot of outside investors were coming in, they were buying up properties, and then when those areas those companies end up going bankrupt or ended up losing their properties through foreclosures, then all of a sudden we saw banks kind of packaging houses together, packaging large parcels of houses together. And this is a problem throughout the city, but it's definitely a problem in those areas because a lot of people saw the momentum that was happening in Benton Park, and so then they started buying, blocks and blocks around that area. And then when they got foreclosed on, then the banks would package those, sell them to more investors. So, one of the biggest issues we have right now is that, a lot of people think that vacancies is just a city problem, but there's so many of these properties that are privately owned that we're going to have to figure out a way to be able to run down companies that might be in New York or California that are just holding properties and they don't know how much of an impact this is making on our neighborhoods. So that's something that I look forward to as quite a challenge, but it's something that we have to take on when it comes to rebuilding our neighborhoods. We have to be able to have some sort of way to go after those out-of-state investors and make sure that they are held accountable for the way that their properties are upkept.
So when the banks are packaging these properties and then reselling them to other investors, so are we talking like 10, 15, or 5, 20?
10, 20, 30, 50.
Really? Okay. Yeah. And so like one investment group that could be from New York or California or somewhere else would end up with, let's say, 30 or 40 property. Now, are they usually contingent or are they just spotty? I mean, are they
contiguous?
Contiguous, or are they usually all over the place?
Oh, they're all over the place. Yep, and they're all over the place, but they're all over the place in certain neighborhoods. So all over the place in areas like Graveway Park or Dutchtown, those areas.
So how do you get like the investor in this case? Let's just get 30 or 40 properties, and they might not even know which ones they have. I mean, because they bought them because they were a block that the bank was offering at a good price. So is your aim to get them to break them off so then you can sell them off to individual people who would rehab individual ones? And how do you go about doing that?
Well, that is, it will be a goal, but, it would also be a challenge that to try to figure out a way to let these investment groups know that, there are people that are willing to buy individual properties. And there's this is one of the things that there's a lot of discussion just throughout the city right now. I know just last night I was at an event for SLACO, who is pushing this Proposition NS, which has to do with actually a tax increase to be able to put some money to stabilize city-owned properties. But I think just this conversation just starting to go right now and starting to get different organizations behind the fact that vacancy is such an issue within our city that then hopefully the legislators and hopefully our government will be able to find ways to really kind of hold these developers' feet to the fire when it comes to having to go ahead and break off. But I do know that, from talking to problem properties people in the city and a lot of our, SLDC and a lot of the groups that we already have, a lot of them say that it is a problem trying to even find who owns these buildings when they have LLCs or they have, kind of shadow names without real contact information. So it is going to be a challenge, but it's something that I think that we need to be able to address and find a way that we can make these developers accountable to start letting their properties either go or start putting the money into them to fix them up.
So the other major thing that's going to be on the ballot, there's like 6 different initiatives. So and I don't want to say that one isn't major or one is, but the 2 propositions, one would be a sales tax increase primarily for MetroLink as well as a number of other things. The other one would use the increase in the use tax to build a soccer stadium. Now, I know that mass transportation has been a long-running conversation in the city of St. Louis, but I do sense there is some uneasiness in voting for both of these initiatives. One, because there's not assurance that it's going to be enough to expand MetroLink that much, and especially with the second one, there just does seem to be some opposition to publicly funding sports stadiums. So. Yeah. There are probably some Ninth Ward people listening right now.
I hope so.
I would hope so. What are kind of your thoughts about those initiatives and just more generally about expanding mass transportation and maybe putting funding are maybe not putting funding towards stadiums?
So the first one, the public transportation. So I do not drive a car around the city. I ride a bicycle or I take the bus or Metrolink everywhere. So public transit is something that's very important to me. I'm still reading into the details of Prop 1. So from the things I've read so far, half of the tax increase, roughly $10 to $12 million a year, is going to be going towards the public transit. Having conversations with people about it, a lot of people that are on the no side say, "Oh, well, that's not going to get us anywhere. That's not going to build anything. It's just going to be another study." But from having more conversations recently, I've heard a number of people that are saying that that this amount of money that we're increasing will be able to provide the money for like the feasibility studies and for the engineering reports and the first steps that need to be done before we actually break ground. But they, even Tashara and the Treasurer's Office put $1 million into the studies of this program, or studies of how to make this feasible. So I think that there is momentum. It's also been brought up to me, which I can remember when the original Metrolink was built, and we have done things in phases. And one of the arguments that I've been hearing a lot lately is that this proposition that we're putting forward right now, if this can get us the money to be able to get more federal money, and if this funds just a portion, say, from the new NGA to Cherokee Street, that section, then that should eventually will kind of entice the county and entice the regional partners to invest more in connecting the whole system.
And that's going to be a challenge, because even before County Executive Stenger was in office, I think that the county executive's position, and I'm talking about Charlie Dooley here, was they wanted a Metrolink expansion to Maryland Heights or some other parts in the county, and they just weren't very enthusiastic about the North-South Metrolink idea because they didn't see it as serving the county, and plus the county puts in the most money into the Metrolink system. Right. But I think that's an obstacle that I don't know is not overcomable, but it's not an insignificant one. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100% that the county. I've said, when this proposition got started and people were asking me about it, I will admit that I was on the side of saying like, oh, it's not enough money, nothing will be built, and why are we doing this without a regional partnership? Why are we trying to move forward on Metrolink without having the county and the Metro East and the region involved in it? But as I've been reading more about it and getting more into the details of it, it does seem like a lot of people are under the belief that that by passing Prop 1, that we will be able to start the process. We'll be able to start just the city kind of expansion of it, and then that will get the Metro East and get the county to be able to buy into it for the further expansion, for the next phase of it. And then one of the other things about the Prop 1 is, it is being kind of billed as the Metrolink tax, but there are a number of other components of it. So the city of St. Louis has what's called the Choice, was a federal, Choice Neighborhoods Grant, I believe.
Yeah, I believe that's the case.
Yeah, and so this is going to do fund what they're calling like the mini choice, where they'll be able to take some money and put it into some of the worse off neighborhoods for economic development and for infrastructure, which we highly need. That's one of the things that when I was working in the Office of Sustainability, I'm riding my bicycle in North City, and I think a lot of people don't realize the degree of lack of services that are in areas up there. And so, if we really do want to build our entire city and we really want to make sure that we're taking care of all residents of our city, something like this mini choice neighborhoods funding could go a long way. There's also funding in there for youth jobs, for groups that we have such as Slate, to bring more funding to them to be able to provide more training in youth programming. So I think there's a number of other components that often get overlooked. And I think that the Metrolink obviously is the big chunk of it. That's what everyone talks about. But I think we have to look at the entire package and see what other sort of things will be funded through this tax.
Now, on Proposition 2,
yeah.
I think that I think that again, a lot of the opposition to this is based on the fact that publicly financing stadiums is controversial.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other element of opposition is if Prop 1 passes and let's say Proposition 2 fails, that money would go to affordable housing, it would go to public safety, it would go to everything that the use tax is currently designated for. If Proposition 2 passes and Proposition 1 passes, it's going towards the soccer stadium if we get a team.
Yeah.
So I've talked to you before about it. I know the answer to this, but people who haven't talked to you, what's kind of your feeling on this particular proposition?
I am one of those people that believe we have a lot more serious issues in our city other than not having a soccer team. I absolutely, I listen to a lot of people that say, oh, the construction jobs that this is going to bring and the 300 or whatever concession jobs that this is going to bring, and it's going to rebuild, the edge, of the downtown area. I hear all those things, but when it comes down to it, I've recently heard that people that are looking for affordable housing sometimes are on a 3 or 4 year wait because there isn't affordable housing. In my neighborhood, just in the last 2 weeks, I've watched 6 of my neighbors be moved, essentially pushed out of the neighborhood because the apartments that they were renting now all of a sudden were sold, and now they're going to be turned into townhomes, and people that are on disabilities, low income, the diversity that made me move to my neighborhood. I see it being pushed out. So I would love to see more money, more funding going towards the things that actually invest in our people. So whether that's through the helping out with affordable housing, whether that's through doing more for police community relationships, funding, funding mediators, funding mental health aspects of people being able to really help our community and do things other than just creating another sports stadium. So I'm not a fan of publicly financed stadiums.
Now, what have you kind of heard in your ward? I mean, I'm assuming your view on that reflects the view of the ward. But are there certain things that the people in the ward are feeling very strongly about? I mean, whether or not they feel strongly about the, number one, Amendment 1, the Metro League proposal, or just sort of what's your take of what the view is on the ground, and do you expect much high or low turnout on April 4th?
I didn't expect as high of a turnout as we got in the area on the March 7th.
Wasn't it over 30% in the 9th Ward?
Yeah.
Which I think was much higher than 2013,
Yep.
from
it
what
was.
I remember. But continue.
Yep. So what do I hear so I do expect a pretty decent turnout, but mainly because there are so many propositions and amendments and so many different financial decisions that we have to make. So I think that people will be engaged and want to come be a part of that decision. But what do I hear in the neighborhood? So during my campaign, we knocked on thousands and thousands of doors, and every neighbor that I talked to, they had, their concerns were safety, were public schools, were, equity. Never once did someone say, I'm going to leave this city unless we get a sports team. So although we have a lot of people that do believe that, that a lot of people that even years ago that thought that keeping the NFL team should have been a priority of the city, there's a lot of people now that think a soccer team will be beneficial to the city, but it's not their top priority. It's not the thing that concerns them the most. So I do think that that a lot of people throughout my neighborhoods and throughout the 9th Ward, they do want to know what we're going to do to address safety and what we're going to do to address public infrastructure in schools and those items more than soccer.
I wanted to touch on the public safety aspect because every time I talked with an aldermanic candidate, they mentioned that it was a major priority.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there's different approaches to deal with this issue because I think that one of the things we're seeing is with the new wave of politicians that are coming a lot of them were influenced a lot by Ferguson and the response to it. I'm not sure if you're one of them, but I know that you were very close with Bruce Franks, who is a quintessential post-Ferguson politician.
Right.
And what his approach is not necessarily like he's anti-police, anti-law enforcement. He works with law enforcement all the time, but he feels that the relationship between especially the African-American community and police has broken down in the city, and there needs to be bridges to change that. The Ninth Ward, I think, is about almost half African-American. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's more. I think it's close to 60%.
Yeah, it's a majority African-American ward. So I wanted to know, as Alderman, what are you going to do to improve the relations between the African-American community and the police? And what would you like to see, if it's Sam Dodson or the new police chief, do to make sure that's a priority?
Well, I think it is a common misconception that people look at people like Bruce Franks or even me to some degree, and they say, "Oh, anti-police." That's absolutely not true. We're pro-good police and pro-good policing. And so one of the things that I think that I've been talking about during my campaign is that we really do need to look at community policing in a different way. So when I tell people that, I'm riding my bike or walking around the neighborhoods, and the number of things that you see and that you witness and that you're talking to neighbors and you're talking to them in the streets and in places where they're comfortable, you find out a lot more about people than you do driving in a car or just going past them. So one of the things that I really want to push, and I know this is going to be something that, we're going to have to find more resources for it, but I really do think that we should have more police officers on foot and on bicycle, and they should be walking, our commercial districts, and they should be getting to know the neighbors. So I think that there's a number of things that we can do, even all the way down to we have the Cherokee Rec Center, and Marquette Rec Center, two prominent rec centers between the 9th and the 20th. Cherokee Rec Center right now has a police officers basketball league. Well, those are great ways for neighbors to be able to interact with officers and build respect amongst each other. So I think that there's. And again, this was something that when I was working on Bruce's campaign, that we really talked about how public safety is something, it affects all of us, but we really do have to take a new approach to how we look at policing and start looking at things like whether it's the community policing or whether it's addressing, the job situations or education or broken families. So trying to figure out, the root causes of crime and being able to address it from those aspects instead of just from let's try to police our way and let's try to, lock people up. That's not going to solve anything. We actually have to get to the root causes of crime if we're going to really make a big impact on public safety.
At the risk of putting you in a collision course with the likely new mayor, she's advocated, adding a lot more police officers.
Yeah. About 150. Well, but still,
but that's not an insignificant amount, and
it's about 7 per ward.
Yeah, so. It's not an insignificant amount. I know that she's also talked about a more comprehensive approach to public safety. If you listen to her appearance on this show, that's not her only thing she wants to do. She also wants to invest in a lot of programming and similar aspects to what you're doing. But do you think that more police is going to be an element of the solution to the public safety issue in St. Louis, or is it going to require better relationships, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both, but I absolutely agree that more police is a part of our answer. Because right now, when I'm talking to our captain, for instance, he says, "Hey, I would love to put officers on bicycles. I would love to put people in the streets, but I don't have people. I don't have enough people." So I think that we are kind of stretching our force thin. There's been I went to a meeting last week where there are some officers because they don't have enough bodies, they have some officers that are working 80 to 100 hours a week.
Oh yeah, a lot of overtime.
Yeah, a lot of overtime.
So the money's being spent.
Mm-hmm. So the money's being spent, but then that is not getting us the results that we want, because everyone out there knows if you're working 100 hours a week,
yes,
you're not happy with your job.
And interestingly, I was just at a meeting in Ferguson, and that is one of the problems that they're having. They have 37 police officers. It's down from 54. These police officers are working longer hours than before. The crime situation, while it is not the most dangerous city in the world, which has been alleged by the President of the United States, crime situation there is not insignificant. And you're looking at a city like St. Louis where the crime situation is pretty bad in parts of the south side, parts of the north side. Having people work that much overtime is going to be a problem for dealing with situations of crime. So.
Right. Your decision making, is not where it should be when you're that stressed out from work and working that hard. So that's why I do believe that we need to be able to not only hire more officers. Another thing that is constantly brought up with the higher ranking officers and the chiefs and all of them is that the pay disparity between the city and the county is an issue. So besides hiring more officers, I think we also need to figure out a way that we can actually offer our officers a comparable pay so that we're not training officers and then losing them in a couple of years to the county, which is a big problem right now. So,
absolutely.
So I think that, besides hiring more officers, trying to pay them better, then, obviously if we can get them back to a normal workload, and then if we have normal staffing, then maybe we will be able to start putting officers into more community-involved positions, and I think that it'll help the city altogether with having more trust between people and community and officers. So it is a big issue though. But there's definitely there's no single thing that we're going to be able to do to stop crime. We have to look at it in every angle, and so that's what I hope to be able to talk about.
How would you characterize your relationship with the likely new mayor, Lyda Krewson? Have you talked to her or dealt with her, or had you publicly endorsed one of her opponents?
I did not publicly endorse any candidate. And during the campaign, or during my campaign, I was often asked, who are you supporting? So I kind of, my answer was that the time that I was working in the Office of Sustainability, I had to work with every candidate that was an alderman. I had worked with Tashara on some different training issues and some financial literacy things. So, but I had worked with all of them, and so I told people, and I was happy to tell people, like, hey, when it comes to the project and my experience with working with them, Jeffrey Boyd was great. He drove me around his neighborhoods, and we talked about areas for community gardens, and we talked about corners that need to be cleaned up. Lewis Reed was always, he was always helpful to put me in contact with the different departments that I needed to get in contact with. Lyda, she had the sunflower project up on Delmar, and I was up there putting a garden in with her and her team up on Delmar as part of the Milkweeds for Monarchs program. So I had worked with all of them, and I was willing to work with whoever was going to win the mayor's race. But I made it pretty clear, though, that I was. My campaign, I was going up against an 18-year incumbent. I had a lot of work to do on my own side, and it really, I wasn't in a position to come out and endorse someone and break any barriers. So to the original part of the question, how have I talked to her? Yes. I'm going to, we're having a kind of a unity breakfast this Saturday.
Yes.
I have a meeting with her on Monday, and hopefully we could talk about the issues that I see in my ward and how we can work together to make sure that we're addressing some of these issues.
It's a pretty critical question because in an all-Democratic Board of Aldermen, it's not really a question of Republicans versus Democrats. Oftentimes it's been split on does the alderman support the mayor on certain issues and do they not? And it's going to be kind of a fluid situation because my sense is that soon-to-be Mayor Krewson, assuming she wins the general election, has fostered some pretty good relationships across different factions. I think she's been generally supportive of Mayor Slay's agenda over the years. But I also get a sense that there are a lot of new aldermen that ran in different political circles than her, and her ability to pass legislation through is going to be dependent on whether she can get 15 votes. And I don't think she's going to have as large of numbers as Slay did, at least on paper. But if she works at it and is able to reach across faction lines, she may be able to be successful. That's my observation. Is that a similar thought that you have, or am I totally out there?
No, I agree that I think that, she's going to have, like you said earlier, a freshman class, 11 new people coming in that they're all going to have their own priorities and they're all going to have their own, the things that they want to work on. But when it comes down to it, we were all elected, to represent our wards, but then also we were elected because we have to keep the entire city and the vision for the entire city and the good of the city always as our priority. So yes, I absolutely think that Lyda is going to be successful trying to bring people together. She may have to compromise a little bit more than maybe Mayor Slay did, having his kind of core of people to support him.
Right.
So there may be a little bit more compromise, but I think that's what the city voters wanted right now. I think that's the wave that we've seen of new people and new ideas that we finally have to say, hey, we're not just going to rubber stamp whatever comes out of the mayor's office, that we're actually going to dive into it and make sure that that it is benefiting the whole city and that it's benefiting not just the wealthy stadium owners,
yeah.
per se.
Just a parting thought before we end this. I was looking at the numbers in 2013 versus 2017. Obviously, Mayor Slay won the 9th Ward. Tashara Jones won the 9th Ward this time around. But even in heavily white Southwest City, St. Louis wards, I noticed that if you added the African-American candidates together, like in the 16th Ward, which I talk about all the time, 40% of the vote, which is unheard of in the 16th Ward. In places like the 14th Ward, African-American candidates had a majority over Lyda Cruz. And so that senses to me the combination of you winning and also just looking at the voting results. The South Side is not voting as lockstep with just the white candidate as they were before. I think I think things have changed, and the Bernie Sanders campaign might have changed things. The Bruce Franks campaign might have changed things. Is this a new era in South St. Louis politics? And South St. Louis is a broad area that includes places like your area, places like mine. But did this election showcase a lot of the winds of change, so to speak?
I believe so. I mean, it's we were talking earlier about throwing out this word progressive, which I don't like to always use that word because so many people have a different idea of what it means. But I absolutely think that right now that this election has shown that Ferguson is real. And if you're not willing to look at the Ferguson report and you're not willing to maybe take into consideration some of these things that the Department of Justice suggested, a lot of us that are in South St. Louis, we've seen for years how our city can be divided. We sat back and we've watched policies be made that disproportionately affect minorities. So I think that is, this is definitely a new era in St. Louis where we are ready to move the entire city forward. We are ready to look at areas and look at things through a new lens, so that we are making sure that we are representing everyone in the city and taking care of some of the major problems that we have, whether it come from life expectancy, whether it come from health issues, whether it come from education outcomes. We have to look at our entire city here and work for the good of the city. And so I definitely think that this is the new winds blowing in the city of St. Louis, that we are starting to look at things at how we're going to represent all people, and especially with what's coming in now with immigrants, nationwide, that we have to look at Cherokee Street is probably one of the largest concentrations of the Hispanic population. We have to represent them, and we have to go out of our way to make sure that they feel like they are part of our community, that they have a voice in our political system, and that we are equally representing everyone.
Well, thank you very much for coming here.
Yeah, thank you.
And talking for 42 minutes and 42 seconds.
All
And
right.
in saying that, more seconds have passed. For all of our stories, stlpublicradio.org. Follow me on Twitter at @JRosenbaum. Follow Joe on Twitter at
J Mannies. That's JMannies.
And how would people follow you either on Twitter or any other parts of the World Wide Web?
Dan Guenther STL. So DanGuenther STL. And that is not only Facebook, but also Twitter, also email. So
we'll be back next time. Until then, so long.
The Gateway brings you the day's news from the St. Louis region and across Missouri. It also includes stories from the Illinois side of the river and our Metro East reporter, Will Bauer.
In Alton, in Belleville, in East St. Louis, in Edwardsville, in Cahokia Heights, at Scott Air Force Base, I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
Listen to reports from Will and all of our journalists weekdays on the Gateway, on the STLPR app, and wherever you get podcasts.